Since Avengers Endgame, fans have been asking one big question. Why didn't Doctor Strange revive Tony Stark? With the Infinity Stones literally on Tony's body and Captain Marvel there, fully capable of handling another snap, it seemed possible. But there's more to the story. Here are 3 compelling reasons why Strange didn't revive Tony Stark. Reason number 1. In Infinity War, when Scarlet Witch destroyed the Mind Stone along with Vision, it triggered a massive explosion that shook everything around it, even knocking Thanos back. Well, once Thanos got close to where Vision was, and reversed time, he managed to bring back both the Mind Stone and Vision back from the dead. However, he also brought back that explosion, meaning bringing someone back to life using the Time Stone also affects the surroundings. A similar situation could have occurred if Doctor Strange reversed time to revive Tony Stark. The last thing Tony did was decimate Thanos' army. So, if Strange tried to bring him back, he risked also bringing Thanos and his army back. And Thanos is an extremely intellectual being and a savage when it comes to combat. He could have quickly turned and fought to get the stones back if he had come back to life. This was a risk Doctor Strange almost certainly considered. After all, he looked into over 14 million possible outcomes. We know he traveled this far into the future, and it's likely he saw this exact scenario. Resurrecting Tony could have reignited the threat of Thanos and his army, something Strange could not afford to risk. Reason number 2. What if Doctor Strange didn't just rely on the Time Stone, but decided to use all the Infinity Stones to bring Tony back? Well, that leads us to reason number 2, why Doctor Strange didn't revive Tony Stark. The Infinity Gauntlet, or even the Nano Gauntlet, can't actually bring someone back to life once they've died. Now, you might be thinking, but Hulk snapped and brought back half the universe, right? So, the Gauntlet can bring people back to life, doesn't it? Here's where things get tricky. The Russo brothers, the directors of Infinity War and Endgame, dropped a subtle hint that the people who were snapped weren't truly dead. They weren't killed, they were wiped away from existence. Or, as Thanos himself put it best in Infinity War, saying, "They ceased to exist."
All 6 stones, I could simply snap my fingers. They would all cease to exist, and I call that mercy.
In an interview after Avengers Infinity War, the Russo brothers revealed that Thanos didn't technically kill anyone. Instead, he wiped them away from existence. They even dropped a hint about the possibility of the people who were snapped being trapped in the Soul World, though this idea didn't quite play out in Endgame. What they did make clear was that Thanos didn't actually take anyone's life, he erased them entirely. This distinction is important because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, death and being wiped from existence might be 2 very different concepts. The MCU hasn't fully defined its metaphysical rules, so we don't know exactly how life, death, and the afterlife work in their world. But if there is an afterlife, the Infinity Gauntlet might not have the power to reach it. The Gauntlet in the movies is very different from the one in the comics. In the comics, Thanos could snap as many times as he wanted without feeling any repercussions. But in the films, when Thanos used the Gauntlet, it nearly destroyed his body the first time, and the second snap almost killed him. That's a major difference. Even Nebula in the comics could wield the Gauntlet without harm, but in the MCU, the Russo brothers made it clear that using the Gauntlet required the user to close their fist. This was evident during the battle on Titan when Doctor Strange warns his cloak, "Don't let him close his fist," preventing Thanos from using the Gauntlet.
Don't let him close his fist.
The key point here is that the Gauntlet in the movies is very different from its comic book version. In the films, it may not have the power to bring people back from the afterlife completely. This could explain why Hulk couldn't bring Natasha back in Avengers Endgame, even though he tried. It wasn't just because she made the sacrifice for the Soul Stone, it likely had more to do with the fact that the Gauntlet simply didn't have the ability to reverse her death. After all, her death wasn't from the snap. She died from a fall. A different kind of death altogether. The same goes for Vision and Quicksilver. Why didn't they come back when the Gauntlet was used? Why didn't the stones revive them? The truth is, the Gauntlet might not have that kind of power. This could also be why Doctor Strange didn't use the stones to bring Tony back. Some death simply can't be undone by the Gauntlet, no matter how powerful it is. Reason number 3. The third reason Tony Stark wasn't revived in Avengers Endgame is the most intriguing one, and it's tied to a truth that Doctor Strange knew all along, that Tony Stark had to die. Strange understood that Tony was the one who needed to snap, and he was aware that doing so would cost Tony his life. But after Tony snapped, wiping out Thanos, his army, and the threats to the universe, the question arises, why didn't Strange bring him back afterward? What could possibly be the threat? Well, the threat might have actually been Tony Stark himself. Remember, this is the man who created the Iron Legion. Tony built the Iron Legion after a glimpse of future threats in the first Avengers film. His PTSD from that battle led him to create hundreds of Iron Man bots to protect the Earth. That wasn't the end of it. Tony went on to build Ultron, a defense system that ultimately turned against humanity. And why did he do this? All because of a vision planted in his mind by Scarlet Witch. She didn't need to implant ideas into Tony's head. His own desperate need to protect the world drove him to create something disastrous. Now, imagine if Tony survived the snap. What if he came back and realized that, in his paranoia, he wasn't wrong? What if the Earth truly needed a defense system, something like Ultron, to ensure its survival? The thought of Tony surviving would mean the possibility of him creating even more dangerous technologies. His PTSD, combined with the trauma of Endgame, could have pushed him to create something far worse than Ultron. Had Tony survived, it would have been hard for him not to say, "I told you so" to the Avengers. This would only inflate his already massive ego, making him even more convinced that he was the only one who could protect the world. Add to that the vast amount of vibranium from Wakanda, made accessible 5 or 6 years before Endgame, and the 6 Infinity Stones he wielded, and Tony would have been an unstoppable force. His ability to shape the world and his willingness to control its defense systems would have posed a huge risk, and this is where Doctor Strange's foresight comes into play. Strange likely saw this potential future, where Tony, despite his best intentions, ended up being the very person who could bring about destruction. With Tony's genius, his power, and his inflated sense of responsibility, he could have built something catastrophic to protect Earth, something that, once again, could have turned against them. Strange had already seen millions of possible outcomes, and in the end, he knew that bringing Tony back wasn't just a bad idea, it could lead to the very destruction that Tony had fought so hard to prevent. There were certainly other ways to bring Tony back using the Time Stone, the combined power of the Infinity Stones. Doctor Strange, a master of the mystic arts, probably could have figured out a solution. But in the end, he knew the universe couldn't afford to bring Tony back. Tony Stark's death, though painful, was the necessary sacrifice to prevent him from becoming the very thing he sought to protect Earth from. I hope you enjoyed these theories and the deep dive into why Tony Stark wasn't revived in Avengers Endgame. It's always interesting to explore these hidden details and alternative perspectives. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on any of my future videos. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this theory, so drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Do you agree with these reasons? Or do you have your own ideas about why Tony had to stay gone? Let's discuss it! And that's a wrap on today's theory about why Tony Stark wasn't revived in Avengers Endgame. I hope you loved diving into the reasons behind this huge decision. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you never miss any of the exciting content we've got coming your way. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these theories. Do you agree? Or do you have your own ideas? Drop your comments below, and let's keep the discussion going. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay awesome.